Betrayed from within. Frustration amongst patriotic Americans caused by the seeded narrative, belief of the uninformed. How simple a reality you'd be perceived when your whole ideology is provided for you in a neat little package. What is disturbing in reflection is the wholehearted belief in the establishment's narrative. Even when confronted with direct proof to the counter, direct evidence of the lie pulled over the heads of millions of Americans, still ingrained into protecting the establishment, how can we hope to be free when so many of our countrymen want to be slaves? Slaves to a system of controls and regulations that demand compliance. Amongst many of our opposition around the world, we're inspired by the loss of sovereignty and degradation of core beliefs. Our enemies all know that they cannot challenge our military. Our might is feared universally around the globe. They are using a slower, simple strategy. Destruction from within by our own citizens. A massive psychological warfare campaign is underway within the United States, and it has been for some time. A consistent, reinforcing narrative. A single-party state, unified in effort and intent, continues down the rabbit hole of tearing apart the one unifying factor within the nation, that we are Americans. Pride in the nation is a powerful motivator and would cause countrymen to unite against a common enemy. How have our enemies, in cooperation with the establishment, accomplished such a feat? By using our own weakness against us. Most Americans are trusting in the media, the government. Relatively speaking, it is a small segment of the population that is not. So the effect, backed with power of law and support for secondary process functions, have properly greased the wheels and set the plan into motion, dividing families, friends, and anyone who has a counter view to your beliefs, reinforced by violence, censorship, and the increasing canceling effect, have made people afraid to speak out in opposition, fear of reprisal. Every American of consciousness shares a similar belief, a want to live as a free people and not be bothered or persecuted. So often we revert to party lines and talking points instead of helping other Americans under persecution by the system. The system designed to exude control over your life and actions. The difference of opinion in practically every single topic is staggering, yet healthy for the furtherment of a civilized society. Every voice matters, and every voice has the right to be heard, to allow debate and freedom of ideas for the betterment of society as a whole. This new socialist model is counter to free speech. All oppositional views are to be cast as insurrection, dividing the nation to the breaking point. When Americans are pushed into desperation, we tend to fall back upon our instinctual nature, fight or flight. As primitive as our beginnings, still embedded within our genetic structure, the establishment has knowingly created the circumstance within the nation for the effect of information control and populational dominance. Why would anyone do this to a country? There are numerous reasons. Your loyalties lie with another nation. Your desire, wealth, and power above all else. Ego, as unfortunate as that is, still remains a huge part for the subversion of reality and installment of a narrative. The establishment knows that the only thing protecting them is a broad-scale narrative, and the population that believes the mess they are shoveled daily. We have seen it within our own families, programming of our loved ones. When you cannot have a civil discussion with your own bloodline, that is cause for much concern. Their programming kicked in and removes the part of their brain designed for logic and processing. By design, a person has been turned into a machine that will obey at command anything the establishment tells them to. It is, however, a considerable effort from the establishment. The message must be repeated consistently for the programming to hold, as this program with some directly challenges their core belief, placing them in contention with themselves. So we face our decision whether you care to admit it or not. This has nothing to do with Democrats and Republicans. This is a war against Americans. A war against the establishment versus America. It always has been, and we, the people of this nation, are losing this war. All is not lost. Hope is the single greatest source of strength Americans possess. Our fight rages on. For the awake and aware, it is deep-scale warfare for the nation. For the ones asleep, subjects to the programmed message. They view non-compliant Americans as agitators and liars. The hold of the narrative is extremely convincing, as we see from the events of late. The population will annihilate itself to protect whichever version of reality they believe in, with so much fury that people will turn against their neighbors, friends, and family. Anyone that is familiar with this concept of warfare knows this to be true. We must regain control of the narrative of freedom and personal responsibility. I believe this course alone constitutes a necessity for kinetic warfare. Until we break the hold of the programming from the American people still asleep, there will be no direct path forward. The establishment will continue to reinforce its control measures and further their enslavement. There is no easy solution, but the solution remains. We must be capable of freeing our countrymen from the hold of the establishment. We have some time until we transition from words unto action. We are entering the extended regret phase in which we realize that something is considerably wrong, but the message and scope of influence is unclear or distorted. Many will never come out of this phase. They choose non-confrontation, would rather submit to anyone rather than fight for anything themselves. We have always had this viewpoint in our nation. The turning of a nation will not be decided by the weak of heart, it will be decided by the warriors, the courageous who hold by their sheer willpower and character of conviction would risk everything for the nation that means everything to them. Until the time of a national awakening, these warriors forge forward alone. Steady forward.